Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Gemini Rising. My name is Natalie Sady, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Dr. Anne Woolke. Anne,
hello.
Always so good to have you here with me. And today's episode, I think this is the episode I've been most excited about. Joining us is animal communicator and author Karen Anderson. And just before I say welcome, Karen, I just need to say these 3 books, which we will get into in just a little bit, I have loved every single word of these. So Karen, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. You just made my day so much brighter. I love sharing what the animals tell me.
And we'll get into this a little bit later in the episode. We've talked on this show before about the fact that I've had instances where animals talk to me. Plants always like to talk to me. I can't go to sleep if they need a drink or anything like that. But in your book, and please forgive me because I can't remember which one you tell the story in, you initially, when you first started hearing the animals talk to you, you kind of dismissed it and buried it deep down. Why did you do that?
Well, I could, as a child, understand the animals in my life, but I thought everybody could. So at that point, I wasn't pushing anything down. I was just enjoying it. I was having conversations with them, silly little conversations. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older where my parents started to discourage this crazy behavior because they didn't quite know what to do with me or how I would know things about the animals in our household. I started seeing human spirits as well. And so that was very troubling to them because I could describe departed human loved ones that I never met. So that part, for me, I could feel my parents' disapproval. And that's when I started to hide what I was doing and keep it to myself and not tell anyone. And it just got buried after a few more years until later.
Did they ever accept it? Did they ever become okay with it where you could openly discuss it? Or was it something that became a separate part of your life?
Not as a kid, no, but certainly now my mom is very open to it. She's actually very intuitive herself, although she doesn't really practice anything, but my father still doesn't quite wrap his head around what I do. So they're both alive and well. They know I work with animals, and I think that it might be partially generational for their understanding of what I do, but mom certainly has she's a big supporter of mine and of course loves what I do now. So it took a long time to get there.
Right. There's one part of your story where you talk about an incident that happened while you were communicating with the, I think, orange tabby cat in your neighborhood, right? And something that happened that kind of caused you to push your abilities away for a while. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. And, this goes back to when I was about 7 or 8 years old. And I was communicating with a kitty that I saw across the street. I lived in suburbia, so we had your typical neighborhood with sidewalks. And right across the street, I was out one summer night. I saw a little orange and white kitty that I had never seen before. And of course, I knew all the animals in the neighborhood. And this kitty was new. So in my mind, I was connecting with it and talking to it and asking it to come over and play, that I really loved kitties. And I finally was able to convince this cute little kitty to come across the street when out of nowhere, a car came by, and it was really bad. I watched the whole thing happen, and it was devastating. The cat didn't make it. The car kept going, and I was left standing there by the side of the road looking at the cat, who tragically was not completely passed away yet. It was very traumatizing, and I felt so responsible for what I had done, calling the cat over to me, that that was the final straw. At that point I said, no more. I'm never doing this again. And I stuffed it all away.
But the other side of that is something magical happened a little further down the road. And this story, I sobbed. I actually called my sister when I read that part of the story, and I said, I just read this thing and it was so upsetting. But can you now talk about, it was a dove, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And talk about, completely mind-blowing experience. So that was when I was a kid, 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old. So fast forward, now I'm in my 40s, and I'm living here in Spokane, Washington, and I'm at a 4th of July gathering party. And I really didn't want to go. I wasn't really doing very well in my life at that time. Everything was kind of messed up. My relationship at the time was failing. I was back in the mortgage business. I wasn't doing anything that I love to do. And I really just didn't even know who I was or what I was doing or where life was going at that point. So I got invited through work to go to this 4th of July celebration. So I went. And while we were sitting there, the next door neighbor came over and said, "Oh, you're Karen. You're the one who talks to animals." And I usually at that time didn't share that, because most people start to poke fun or make a joke of it. Oh, what does my hamburger say? Things like that. And I just don't appreciate that at all, because it's just, I take my work very seriously. I don't take myself seriously, but I take my work very seriously. So I just kept it to myself. So I couldn't believe that this neighbor came over and knew who I was and started chatting with me about it right there in front of everyone. So I kind of panicked a little bit, like, oh my gosh, now everybody knows. So she said, "Hey, come on over to my house." She was very open, very kind. I have this little bird that my cats caught, and I was able to rescue it from them before they caused it too much, injury. But we'd love to know more about it. And if, does he have a family somewhere? What can this little bird tell us? So I went next door, and she came around the corner with this little dove on her index finger in a room full of people. There were kids running around, there were adults everywhere. It was a party. So there was all this chaos going on. And I thought, oh my gosh, how cool is that? The bird is just sitting there. It's so calm. And so she said, well, here, tell us. So I put my finger out for this little bird to step onto, and something magical happened. It was almost as if time stopped still. Time stood still, and everything faded away. And the only thing I focused on was that little bird, who happened to be a little dove. He started talking to me, and I say he because it had this incredibly rich male voice, like just, goosebumps kind of voice. And this little bird knew everything about me. It knew what I was going through. It knew that I wasn't really communicating with animals anymore. It saw everything that was happening in my life. And I was shocked. I didn't understand what was happening. So this was the pivotal moment. This was that, what is happening here? I can't explain this logically, but it was so fantastic and magical. I didn't want it to end. And things from there just exploded in the most wonderful way. So that story is why I'm here today. That moment of that little bird getting on my finger and talking to me, saying, Karen, you need to do this. You're supposed to share this message and be a voice for the animals. It changed me. How would this bird know this? So how that ties in with the little kitty that passed away so many years ago, that was also another complete shock to me. Up until that time, I had never really believed in reincarnation or thought about it too much. I just kind of thought, yeah, okay, whatever. But I wasn't really on board with it. And when I later connected with that little orange kitty that I had so tragically called across the street so many years ago, I was surprised to hear him say how good he was doing and that he was full of life and so grateful to me. And I thought, why would this kitty be grateful to me? I'm the one that called it across the street and ended its life. And it went on to say that he had served his purpose and that everything had come full circle. And I was not understanding, what does this all mean? And he said, well, let me show you, you know me, let me show you who I am. And he showed me the little dove that had spoken to me at that 4th of July celebration. He had returned, reincarnated to come back into my life to keep me on track so that I would continue to do this work. So blew my mind.
Yeah.
I still get emotional when I hear that story.
I know. I think we all have those experiences of, you know, having a beloved pet die, or seeing, unfortunately, a pet get killed on the road. I know when I was younger, we had a deer ran into our car on a trip from California up to Washington. And I turned around and saw the deer and, you know, struggling, and it was horrifying, you know.
Yes.
And I think it's just, it's wonderful to hear about what you know about their souls and how sometimes they're here to teach us lessons. Or I even noticed in the chat, someone talked about that they had a German Shepherd who they think may have a part in breaking a karmic cycle with their family. And I think that's, you know, isn't that why sometimes pets do come into our lives, is for
Absolutely.
our lessons or for different reasons.
I like to call them experiences because a lesson sounds kind of like we did something wrong. And we have to do it. We have to learn it again until we get it right. I like to think of it that animals are in our lives because we are supposed to experience as many things as we can here in physical form, right? That's why we're here, for experiences. And think about all the magical experiences you've had because of the animals that you have come in contact with. They help us do things that we would never do if they weren't in our lives, or experience things we would never experience. I have never in my life, and I know many of your listeners and your viewers will agree with me, I have never in my life experienced the deeply profound love with anyone human as I have with an animal companion. It is the deepest, most profound, complete feeling of love. There is never any judgment. There is never any expectations. It's just the purest form of love. And that, I think, is the greatest gift that they give us, is that profound, deep love that we cannot get from someone else. I mean, that I don't have human children, so forgive me. I can't speak on that side of it. And I'm sure there's probably some people saying, well, I love my kids more than anything. And I understand sort of, but I don't have human children. So it's the closest experience I can have to that deep love, that kind of love that you can't get from anyone else. And that, I think, resonates with so many people, that how do you describe that? How do you explain that? You can't. It's just this magical thing that happens, and lucky us that they are with us and that we get to share so many experiences with them. And as tragic as it is when it's time to say goodbye, I'd do it all over again to be able to experience that love, because they've really made a difference in my life. They've made it so much richer, so much better.
I have to say, as someone else who is childless, I completely agree with everything you say. And I will have conversations with people and I will have to preface sometimes a comment that I'm going to make and say, I don't have children, but my animals are the equivalent of my children. They just are. They are my entire world. And especially because I obviously live in a country that I was not born in. My family are back in Australia. So for me, I'm, navigating this world. And my dog that I had over here until he passed very suddenly last February. And I don't know that I'll ever get over the loss of him because he was such an important part of my world. I still wouldn't change it. Not a single second. If I could do it all over again, knowing the pain that's coming down the other end, I absolutely would. Absolutely, without question. And it makes me sad when people say, I'll never have another pet. I can't go through that. Think about everything you got and look at your life and take away all the love and all the smiles and all the laughs. Bumble and I laughed every morning, and he would get up and I'd be opening blinds and he'd be weaving his way through it and making an absolute mess of the place. And then he'd look at me with a grin on his face as if to go, do you like that? And we would laugh, and then we would head out the door so he could go to the bathroom. And after he passed, I realized every single day started with laughter. You don't get that without them.
Absolutely not. I mean, generally speaking, they are like the brightest part of our day. And what I've found in the work that I've been doing now for, now 27 years, is that some people, when they get to be in their senior years, and maybe not even in their senior years, but certainly older, their family is gone, their loved ones are gone, and their animals are all they have. They are their complete world. The sun rises and sets upon them. They literally do everything based on their animals' needs. And when that companion leaves, when they make their transition, it is utterly devastating. And many people have a hard time handling it. And I think that's where, because I hear it too, I can't do this again. I can't go through this pain again. They don't want to subject themselves to that pain. And on a certain level, I do understand that. I recently, when I was writing my newest book, I lost 8 companions during the time that I wrote that book, The Pet I Can't Forget. And each loss was just so devastating. But every time I felt like I was getting ready to focus and be able to breathe again, let alone write again, I would sit down and start writing, and I'd lose another. And it would start all over again. And sometimes there's what I call compounded grief, where it builds. So you haven't even finished grieving completely, even if there is such a term as finished grieving. But then there's another one and another one. And then it keeps going and going and going for whatever the loss. It doesn't even have to be the passing of a pet. It can be the loss of a job or an opportunity or whatever it is, just losses piling up. And it's really, really hard, I think, the older I get, to handle those situations, because you start to think about too your own mortality, right? You start going, okay, well, we all have an expiration date, right? What is mine, and how much longer am I going to be here? And, do I really want to go through all of that pain again? Because it's really devastating. I remember just being completely broken at times, unable to function. Like, I can't even get out of bed, kind of non-functioning person. Breathing was hard. You know, the world seemed so dark, and I never thought I would get out of that dark space. So for those who can relate to that, that's why I wrote my books, because there's so much more to it than what we realize. And once we understand what actually happens, that's the one glimmer of hope that I think can help somebody in that dark place move into a healing journey, which I think it is a journey. I don't think we ever get over a loss. I think loss is supposed to change us forever. We're never supposed to be the same. But I think we go on a journey through healing, and we come out a different person, but we're meant to be a different person. We aren't meant to be the way we were before that loss. That's part of our spiritual growth. It's part of what we're here for. And just knowing that the animals that we love so dearly are always connected to us, that's what keeps me going. And receiving their signs and messages, and of course being able to hear them, it is just magical.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to ask one other question sort of on that topic or in that direction. So what I realized after losing Bumble is, in my earlier life, whether it was at the family home, we always had a house filled with animals. At one point we had 5 cats and a dog. There were always multiple animals. So whenever there was a loss, you had to get up and you had to function for the other animals in the house. And even when I was living on my own, I had a couple of pugs. And then when my mum passed, I got the family dog. She had found me as a stray. They all found me when I was a kid. My mum just said they know she will take them home and they'll be safe with her. And so again, I had a house filled with animals. So as I lost them, and the cat distribution system gave me a cat, which I didn't really need at the time, and a cat appears.
There's another one.
It's meant to be.
Aw.
But I realized when I lost my last dog that the cat had come into my life because she needed to be there for that transition for me. When I lost Bumble, it was just him and I in the house, and the loss of the only companion I had and nobody else in the house that I had to get up for was so overwhelming. And I realized that for me, and this may not be the same for everybody, but I'm curious as to whether you've had clients who have gone through the same thing, but that loss of the only pet in the house, the silence is deafening, and you wake up, and for a split second, because obviously when you're asleep, you're in a different place. You wake up and for a moment, everything feels normal, and then your world comes crashing in again, and there's nobody you have to get up for. And I found that grief to be, I don't know if worse is the right word, because I've grieved all of these animals that I've lost and they've all been incredibly special, but it was so overwhelming in a way I don't think I'd ever experienced before.
And I can completely relate to that. I hear that the silence is deafening, that the pain intensifies in the silence because we're so used to hearing, purrs or the sounds of them in the house, or their collar, or even just the little snoring, or just the little sounds that they make. We're so used to those sounds, and then to have that be completely gone, I do think it's paralyzing, and it's what really sends people into that deep, dark place. And I've been there. I have been in that deep, dark place. Even knowing what I do for a living, I'm still human. I still feel those emotions and the pain and the grief. And, it doesn't exempt me from that experience. But what is so incredible is the fact that they're still with us, even though we can't see them, hear them, or necessarily feel them, and that they know what we're doing and what's going on in our lives. That's the part that I just love so much, because it's not one of our senses that we're able to pick up, we think they're gone. That's it. it's emptiness. They're just gone forever, but they're not. And they prove that to me again and again, over and over, countless times, with their signs and their messages and how they stay connected to us. Going back even 100 years, one of my oldest clients was in her 90s, and I communicated with a cat that she had as a little girl. So we're going back like, 90 years, and this cat was still with her, seeing what was currently happening in her life, present tense. So that to me is just fascinating, and why I love this work that I do so much, because that is so special. And the healing that takes place when you receive a message from somebody that you've loved your whole life, and you think for sure they're gone, and then come to find out they're not. They're just in this other dimension where they have no physical form, but yet they're still connected to you. It's, it kind of expands your mind, and it helps you handle those situations the next time, a little bit better. And that's what it's done for me. I've learned so much from the animals and the messages that they shared with me. I didn't know any of this stuff when I first started. I had no clue what I was doing, or what the animals knew, or how much they could tell me. It's just absolutely amazing to me that I get to be able to share their messages and how much they know. It's mind-boggling.
I was thinking, one of the really interesting things that you talk about is that animals also feel grief, and you describe that, and also you've been able to be in touch with animals who've crossed over. And I just remember one story in particular where you talk about an animal who was seeing spots, and you get the messages too. That's so interesting how how you get messages and just think, what in the world, have to convey them anyway. And they turn out to be so meaningful. But I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what animals experience in terms of grief, and then the grief and dying experience from an animal's perspective.
Absolutely. So yeah, and jump in if I am talking too much, because I get so excited when I talk about this stuff. Okay, so the story about spots, just so there's a little bit of backstory there. I was at a convention, and I used to do these psychic fairs where people would come in and sign up for a session right there, sit down at these little folding chairs and a card table, and they'd bring a picture of their pet or have it on their cell phone, and then I would deliver the messages from their pet right there. So that's what I was doing. I was sitting at a card table with these two clients, actually, and one of them had a dog that had passed away, and I think it was her sister that was there with her. She also had a companion animal on the other side. So the lady that I was speaking to, she just desperately wanted to know that her beloved dog was okay. And so I'm delivering the messages, and all of a sudden I see these cow-like spots, black and white spots all over. And I thought, what? And I say all over, but it's kind of in my mind's eye. So like, for instance, right now, if I were to say to you and your viewers, picture your kitchen. You can look at me, but you can still, in your mind's eye, see your kitchen. You can see the sink, you can see the fridge, you can see where the stove is. You can place things in your mind, even though your eyes are open, you're looking at me. So that's how it is when I receive a message. My eyes are open and I can see what's going on around me, but then I'll get these like overlay of images. So I start seeing these spots, and I didn't see anything at first because I didn't know what I was seeing. And she kept saying, did my dog find this other dog, my sister's dog on the other side? I just, please tell me they're together. They were best friends in life. I just need to know that they're together in the afterlife. And I'm asking the dog quietly in my mind, did you find this other dog? And all I saw were these spots. No answer came, just spots. So I finally just said, I'm seeing spots everywhere. Is there any reason why I would see spots? Well, the other dog had big, giant spots on her. She was a black and white spotted dog. So of course, she would be seeing spots because she was with the other dog. So the communication isn't always the way two humans would talk to each other. But obviously, they had reunited in the afterlife because she was seeing spots, she was seeing the other dog. So that's kind of fun. It's a little bit like charades in a way. You have to figure out, well, what are you showing me? They won't always tell you for whatever reason. Some animals are better at images. Some animals are better at emotions, sending them. Some animals are better at words. And some send you a combination. So you have to be ready for just about anything. And then I'm in the midst of trying to listen, watch, pay attention, and sense everything that they're sending me. And I have to put it together so that it makes sense to the client. So sometimes it gets a little bit tricky. But now I totally forgot your question, of course, because I got.
I think it was about the grief process.
Oh, the
that
grief.
animals experience.
Thank you.
And yeah, and
Thank you. Yes.
maybe even how can we help them when they lose their companions as well?
Yes. So I don't like to humanize animals because they are very different in many ways. However, they're also very similar to us in that some feel a tremendous amount of grief and loss and depression like symptoms when a companion animal transitions. And I don't quite understand why, but every animal is different and unique. Some are very affected by a loss, others not so much. And I can attest to this because I've had some animals that go into a deep, deep depression when a companion leaves. And then other times it's like they don't even notice somebody is gone. So it's very personal. It's very unique. So every animal is different. But what we can do is we can talk to our remaining animal. When we talk to them, while they may not understand every word, we are flashing images in our mind as we're speaking, and they can read those images. They can pick up the story and connect the dots. And plus, it's coming from your heart, so they'll have an understanding with your feelings of what it is that you're saying. And just tell them that their beloved companion is still with them in spirit form. They're alive and well. They're doing all the things they love, and they can stay connected to them, just by being in their favorite places or doing their favorite things that they used to do together. You can talk to your animals out loud, much like you would talk to a 9 or maybe 10-year-old child. That same way. Keep it short, keep it simple. Try to keep it as positive as you can, and just let them know, hey, they're not here with us physically anymore, but they're still connected to us energetically in spirit form. And I do this. I tell mine out loud. I also tell them in my mind. And I did this many times with my clients' sessions, is I would help the remaining animal connect to the spirit animal by opening up the line of communications between them energetically. Just like you would plug in a cell phone into the wall to charge, I would literally plug them into each other's energy so they can connect energetically, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But once I would do that, it would seem that the symptoms of their grief and their loss would ease, never completely go away, but it would certainly ease and help them understand that their companion is still there. And just the family talking about the one that they lost and how much they love them and telling happy stories and remembering them, those things help the remaining animal deal with their loss too. And let them be sad. It's okay for them to be sad. They lost a friend too. So just like we don't want to be told, well, stop crying. What are you crying about? Our animals don't want to be told, stop grieving anymore. It's time for you to move past that. Let them be in that moment and let them experience, because that's love. You're seeing the end result of love. Grief is love. It's a way of expressing your feelings for that individual that is physically no longer there. And they have a right to do that too. Be in that moment with them.
I've always wondered, so when I was an adult and I was living on my own and I had a couple of pugs and then I had the family dog, and my first pug was about to pass. Diagnosis to death was very quick. I knew a month before she was diagnosed with anything that something was wrong. I kept taking her to the vet and saying something's wrong with her. And the vet's running these tests and saying there's nothing wrong with her. What are you seeing? And I said the spark in her eye is gone. She was letting her brother sleep in spots that she would never let him sleep in. And she was sitting over the other side of the room watching. It was almost like she was setting us up for her not being there. And that's what I was picking up on. Anyway, once she was diagnosed, I think she passed within 3 weeks. And there was a night when everything came to a head. And I bundled her up and I was taking her to see my vet, who kindly got out of bed and was meeting me at the clinic to check her and see if there was anything that we could do. And I wrapped her up and I allowed the other dogs to say goodbye. We all knew what was happening, even without speaking. And I've always wondered, is that a good thing to do for our animals, or should we just sort of go and deal with it? From my perspective, I never wanted my animals to just have their brother or sister just disappear and nobody ever knew. And they just sort of sniffed each other, gave each other a quick lick, and then we went. But I don't know if that eases their grief because they understand what's going on, because I believe that animals understand death. But I'm curious as to your thoughts.
I think it's, again, very individual. But I do the same thing. I'll let them say their goodbyes. Sometimes it's not possible, though, because they might already be at the vet clinic or wherever when they make their transition. So I let them have their moment. And animals do sense the end of life. They can sense when that internal flame, if of the soul, is dwindling and getting ready to leave the physical body. So I think it's a good thing, a positive thing to do, to let them have their moment, even if we don't see a big exchange of, quote unquote, emotion between them. That doesn't mean that something really special is not happening. We have to trust that some things can't be seen. There's an exchange of energy going back there where animals read each other energetically all the time. We can't see that just any more than we can see the telephone frequency from our cell phones. We're wireless. We can't see the exchange. If you were to call me on the phone, we can't see that happening, but it's happening. So we have to trust that it's happening between the animals too. And I think that is a really good way of helping them understand what happened to their companion. I've had many animals that did just what you said. Where's, whoever the animal, where'd they go? My best friend is gone. And they look for them. They're searching. They feel like, oh my gosh, what happened to them? And then they actually panic, like, well, is that going to happen to me too? Am I going to just one day vanish and disappear? So I think it's good to have some kind of closure on the best level that you can, whatever you can provide. And, like I said, we're not always able to do that, but in the best way that you can, providing some kind of closure, I think really does help. Some animals are greatly affected by that. And again, other animals, like I had this one dog, he was almost happy the other dog was gone because he got the whole place to himself at that point. And he loved that. He's like, woohoo, no more competition. So you just never know how they're going to respond. So be ready for that. They might just be, really glad to be the only animal left or whatever. And that's okay too. Don't judge, don't humanize it. Just let it be whatever it is.
I always wondered, you hear so many things that scientifically about what animals are like. And one of them is that they don't perceive time in the same way that we do. And I just wonder what your thoughts are on that.
I think that animals are very aware of our time. I think they know our schedule, they know our routines, they know when dinner time is or breakfast time. I think that they are very much in tune with time. I will say the one thing that is a little bit different is they understand linear time, such as if I'm going to be going away for the weekend, I will tell my animals that I'm back in, let's say, 2 dark nights or 3 dark nights or however many dark nights that I'm going to be gone. And I do that by the dark of night and the light of day. They do seem to understand that. They also seem to understand like a full moon cycle. Like I have a client that would often go fly to another country, and she would be gone for a couple of months. And I would check in with her cats before she left and tell them that your mom will be gone for 2 full moon cycles, 2 full months. So they understood that. It was something that was part of nature. So they really grasped that and they understood it. But as far as the scientific side of what animals can understand, they are truly, I think, way smarter than science gives them credit for.
Mm-hmm.
I think science is way behind on their studies, and I'll see these test results. Oh, science has just discovered that our animals know what we're thinking, and I go, really? Really? I've been doing this for how many decades and science just discovered it. So I just kind of laugh at that, their findings and their research, but maybe someday they'll catch up and they'll realize, they know a lot more than we could possibly imagine and give them credit for. But I don't know anyone that has animals that hasn't had somebody go, excuse me, it's time to eat. You are 5 minutes late.
Exactly.
Where's my food?
Bumble would do that with our walks. If I got lost in research or something like that, if we hadn't done our big walk by 8 p.m., he would turn up and be like, lady,
Yep.
it's time to walk. And this was not a dog that liked change. He liked his routine, and he had a mother that is not about routine, but we had a rough one. But when we were walking, he didn't want to play with anyone. If we saw his friends on the street, he was like, no, it's walk time. It's walk time. And when it was walk time, that's what we had to do. But on the time question, I heard somebody say the other day, and I don't know if it was another animal communicator. I don't know if it was somebody just having a thought about our animals, but they said they were talking about the perception of time, but it was more about mortality. And they said, we think about our life in terms of we have maybe, let's say, 80 years. And as we get older, we sort of think, well, I'm 40, I'm halfway through, and I've only got another 40 years left, and I'm running out of time. And they said, animals don't have that. They don't know whether they have a long life or a short life. They just live every day, and they don't think about their own mortality at the end of it. They don't sit there and go, well, I'm halfway through or what have you. What are your thoughts on that sort of train of thought?
I think it's true. I think that they don't focus on the end of life the way we do. In fact, they're much more accepting of the dying process and death itself, physical death, than we are. I have yet to meet a single animal that has been afraid of dying. Now, they can pick up their humans' fears, but that's not their fear. They're just picking up on the anxiety or the stress or the worry of their human. Animals are so aware that life continues on so many levels. They realize that physical death is not the end. Now, don't get me wrong. I've never met a single animal that is okay with, like an unexpected death or a sudden death or whatever accident happening. And certainly never an animal that would take its own life, as in a human taking their own life. That's a completely human thing there. But animals are truly more accepting and aware that we are eternal, and they don't obsess about their age. They don't focus on their disabilities if they have them. To themselves, in their own mind, they are whole and complete and perfect. In fact, I've communicated with many animals who have never mentioned any kind of health issue or disability of any kind, come to find out they're missing a leg, or they're blind, or they're deaf, or whatever. They never say anything to me. And the client may think, well, you're not a very good communicator. You didn't even know they were missing a leg or blind or whatever. No, that's because the animals, that's not important to them. And I can only share with you what they tell me or what they share with me. So if that's not important to them and they don't share it with me and they talk about other aspects of their life, that's what I'm going to share. I may sense a vision issue, or I may sense a mobility problem, but many times the animals talk about themselves in perfect wholeness, in a way that we have a lot to learn from them, right? We tend to focus on everything we can't do, all of our issues. We complain about aches and pains. Animals don't typically do that. I have to pull it out of them sometimes. They're hard pressed to get details about illness, injury, pain, anything like that. They don't want to talk about it. They are so different than we are in that respect. So as far as their own mortality, how much time they have left in their body, I think on a higher level, they seem to sense maybe when their time will be. But I have this question come up a lot: do animals choose their time to go? And that plays right into your question. How do they feel about their own mortality? I don't have any animals talking to me that way, saying, well, I only have 5 more years to go. No, they are in the moment right now, living their best life to the fullest, and they don't think about the end of their life. They just accept it.
On that note, I was reading in the chat about this dog that someone got to know on YouTube from Roaming Reckless. Is that the name of the YouTube channel? And how a dog just passed on the channel, and that, she didn't even know this dog personally, but was so sad about the fact that this dog passed away. And I feel like that's one of the things about animals that I don't even know how to express it, but you can connect. They reach people on a different level, and they can reach people so wide and far. And I'm a historian, so I have to think about I'm thinking of the example of Rin Tin Tin that we talked about it at some point on one of our shows at High Vibe. But Rin Tin Tin was this World War I German Shepherd who later became a movie star. And this whole story of dogs during the war, during World War I, as companion animals to the soldiers, is so compelling as well. But it's something that touched not only the soldiers that fought, but after the war, this dog touched people because of whatever his feats during the war had been. So much so that there would always, they made the movies about Rin Tin Tin and then would replace the dog to make sure that, okay, now we have a new Rin Tin Tin, similar with Lassie. So I don't know. I just wanted to make that statement about how much they touch people. And I think dogs really in particular do that, and maybe horses. What do you think about that, Karen?
I agree totally. I mean, I grew up in the 60s, so I had Lassie, of course, and all the Disney movies with all the animals. And, it truly was part of my childhood that animals could talk. I mean, Lassie didn't talk, but Lassie communicated with Timmy, right? I mean, they knew what each other was thinking. So there was a communication going on there. It was very subtle that was the message there, but Lassie knew things that Lassie probably shouldn't have known, but there was that going on. And I think it does touch us. It touches our heart. It touches our soul. I think it helps us form who we are. My first really close bonds as a child were with my childhood pets. And those relationships that we form where, something loves us, something needs us, and we're taking care of it. And then when we have to say goodbye to it, that completes that cycle and the experience of that relationship. And as a child, that's usually our first experience of death, is of a companion animal. And, how our parents react to it, how we react to it, how we're supported or not supported. I always felt as a child that I wasn't supported because I felt it so deeply when I lost a pet. And it was, what are you crying for? I'll just get you another goldfish. It was that mentality that just crushed me. It wasn't just a goldfish to me. This was my best friend. I talked to it every day. We had, this whole thing together that we did, or whoever the animal was. And I agree with you. I think animals touch us so deeply. And you can see this if you go to anywhere where you're out in public. If somebody walks by with an animal, whatever the animal is, it could be a parrot on their shoulder, it could be a dog on a leash, it could be a cat in a backpack. When somebody enters into a public place and an animal appears, everything changes. You see smiles come on people's faces. Everyone stops and looks at the animal. And I think how do you explain that? There's something there. There's something that we can all connect with and relate to, that the animals bring out in us that we don't get from other human beings. We don't get from other situations. It's just kind of a little special thing that they bring to everything that is unique to them. And when I am with my little guy, Beanie the Weenie, he's a little Chihuahua Rat Terrier mix. I'll walk into a Home Depot or wherever I am with him, and I instantly have 10 friends. Everybody wants to talk to Beanie, hold Beanie, pet Beanie. They don't care about me. They're interested in him. And it just changes us. And that, it says it all to me. It really does change who we are. It opens up a part of our heart. None of those people would talk to me if I didn't have Beanie with me.
Mm-hmm.
I would be invisible. But suddenly I'm very popular because I have this cute little dog, right?
Mm-hmm.
I will say, having had dogs and going to dog parks or walking through the neighborhood, I remember all the dogs' names. I never or very rarely remember the humans' names. It's like, oh, you're Toast's mum and you're Fred's mum. And I sit there and go, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But your dog and I are really good friends. And they go, yeah, absolutely. So I have a question, because I've had, all of my animals are incredible and I would give my right arm to have any of them back. But there are certain standouts where there is that deeper connection. So there's a couple of questions here. Do we have soul contracts with our animals? Or do they come here with a purpose, or do they act as guides? And so they come in at certain moments to protect us, be with us through certain moments in our life? How does that all work?
Oh my gosh. And I wish I had all the answers to those questions, because those are really, really good questions. I can tell you what I've experienced from what the animals have shared with me. And I think that will help shine a light a little bit more on it. As far as a soul contract, I've heard a lot about these soul contracts, that we have them with the other humans in our lives, with our spirit guides, with, angels, archangels, or whomever that we are in our lifetime with. And I would certainly think that perhaps animals will fall into that category as well. However, I do want to say that, a contract sounds very rigid and very human-like. And I think it's more of a flexible type of experience with animals. I think animals come into our lives for a reason, a purpose, a goal. And that can be for a long time. It can be for a short time. It's also supposed to help us have more experiences, to elevate us, to open our hearts, to open our minds, to be more creative, to be true to ourselves. Animals are very much about themselves. They talk about themselves all the time. Their favorite topic is themselves. And it really helps us stay focused and centered on, taking care of us and our goals and our purpose. We get lost sometimes in our careers and in the world. It's a big world out there, and animals bring us right back down to the core of what's really important. So I do think that there are those types of agreements or, like you said, contracts of where animals are with us. And I think because I believe in quantum so much, that there is a higher purpose that someday we may know. Like what was the purpose? Even if it's tragic, we'll someday understand, or someday we'll have the enlightenment of what that was all about. I have so many people that write to me and say, why would my dog or cat or companion animal, why would they leave in such a tragic way? Why would this happen? I don't understand. Is this some form of punishment for something I've done in a past life? Or is it karma? Or is it this? Or is it that? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to all of those things. I'm still learning too. I'm still wondering all of those same things as well. I think we can probably assume that we have all incarnated with each other the majority of our lives with the same souls. We come in and out of the same soul groups a lot. And we carry that forward from lifetime to lifetime. And we are supposedly improving each time, right? We're getting better and better than we were the last time. I hope we're getting better and better than we were the last time. And animals play a very big part of that role for us. So I think it's all very purposeful. I don't know that I could pin it down and say it's because of XYZ that the animals will come into our lives. I think it's much too fluid for that. There's so much more to it than that. I think sometimes we don't appreciate what we have until it's gone. So when we have our animals, sometimes they drive us crazy, right? I had one little Chihuahua where and I could take her outside to go do her business outside and turn around in the house 3 seconds later, and there it is on the floor in the kitchen. So they drive us crazy. So I think someday we may understand what the reason was for all that, or what the soul contract was, or whatever we want to call it, what the purpose is. But I also think that someday we will all come to realize that the only thing that matters, truly, this sounds really corny and cliche, is love. That's all that really matters. Everything we went through, everything we experienced, the highs, the lows, and everything in between, the only thing that really matters is the love, because that is the magical part of our experience. No one can feel the love that you feel for your companions. Nobody can take that away from you. It's there forever and ever. It is eternal. And the only one who truly understands it is your companion animal. Mm-hmm. I think that's what it really comes down to. And I wrote about that in The Pet I Can't Forget, is it really is only the love that matters. Now, regardless of what tragedy you endured while you had that particular animal, I think that's what it comes down to. When I take everything I've learned and all the messages and everything that they've shared with me, and I think about it in that context of trying to figure out, well, why does this happen? Well, why does that happen? Well, gosh, I'd really like to know too. And I don't know, but I think it's here. It's this. And we need to honor that and realize that love supersedes everything. Your love is what will keep you connected to your pet after it leaves its physical body. It's what keeps you connected to everything that is important in this lifetime and your future lifetimes. And it's what you carry forward. And it's why I wrote the pet I can't forget, because you touched on it a little bit, that we love them all. We absolutely love them all. But there's sometimes that one, or if you're lucky enough, two, that just, there's something deeper, there's something stronger, there's something there so indescribable. Like, what is that? What is that connection? What does that mean? So that's what prompted me to write the pet I can't forget, because yes, we love them all, absolutely. But you know what I mean? There's sometimes that connection that goes beyond all other connections.
Mm-hmm. So what about the pet that you can't forget, or not even the pet, the animal that speaks to you in a moment, right? Because I know Natalie and I both talk about when we see an owl in the wild that comes at a moment when you're just like, what? Or I once saw a 3-legged and tailless raccoon that came out of a neighborhood and stood and stared at me at a moment when I was just really feeling down. And I thought, wow, I don't know what the message is, but if that raccoon can be out here surviving in this neighborhood right now, I can get through this, you know? What do you think about, what is happening when the random hummingbird or owl or whatever comes up to us?
Oh gosh, there's so many different things that could be, and signs from our departed loved ones. Our companions like to send messages through little messengers like that little raccoon or that hummingbird or that dragonfly. They like to use other animals to deliver a message. It's easy for them because that animal still has their physical body, so it's easy for them to get a message to us. Plus, they know it'll stand out and grab our attention. They're going to do something that's going to stop us in our tracks, and that's what it did. You stopped in your tracks and you looked at that little guy and you had a moment. There was something that happened in that moment, and that's exactly how they come into our lives and send us signs and messages. We're supposed to see that. It's very intentional, and there's a lot of effort and energy that goes into making that happen. So when we have that moment, those where time stands still, or we have that light bulb moment, or that aha moment, or goosebumps moment, or whatever it is, stop what you're doing, take that all in, and just say, if you don't know who the message is from, just say, thank you, I received your message. Now, can you please give me a big sign as to who sent it? Because we don't always know, right, who that message came from. We might have an inkling. If you get a sudden download, or if you suddenly get a flash of something, it'll happen so fast. So you have to be paying attention. And I've had so many animals over the years, especially with the animal sanctuary. Sometimes it's hard to know who sent it, where it came from. So you just ask for more clarity. So you can say something like, Charlotte, if that was you, send me another sign just like that, and see what happens. And the more you interact that way, the more that you put it out there in those moments, you'll see those things start to happen more and more and more. And we're not always supposed to need to know who sent the message, but we're just supposed to receive that message and be in that moment. Because look what it did to you. You were in a really bad place, but it was a real inspiring moment for you to go, wow, I can do this. I can make it through this. If that animal can survive, I can certainly do this. So that might have been a group message. Sometimes they'll get together and send one big soul group message to you too. So there's no way to tell who actually sent the message because it came from a bunch of them.
Interesting.
I have an affinity with owls. They're a sign from my mum. And often if I'm having this moment of crisis, owls will appear. And there are people that live here in LA that say, I've never seen an owl in my life. And I would come back from my walks with Bumble with photos of these owls that would come and land in front of me. And it's magical. The raccoons, I just want one. I have always loved raccoons. And people think I'm nuts. They're like, no, they're scary and they're vicious. I once had a pizza delivered and the delivery man was talking to me and I start sprinting across the street and he said, what are you doing? And I said, there's a raccoon and I'm going to offer it the pizza for its friendship. And he said, are you serious? And I was dead serious. The raccoon did not care for me or my pizza. and did not choose to be friends with me, and I was devastated. And I think the pizza guy could not get away from me fast enough. He's like, "This woman is a lunatic." But I just quickly want to go through this. So we've got The Pet I Can't Forget, which I just read while I was on a family trip. And so my sister, on the days where we were sharing a room, fell asleep to me crying every night. But I will say they weren't really sad tears. They were really happy tears, because the message or messages in this book are just beautiful. And like I said, I lost Bumble over 12 months ago. I'm still not over it. And this brings it up. But I love thinking about the connection that we all have. We've got Hear All Creatures, which is just beautiful. Was this your first book?
Yes, that tells how I came to get on this path, the Dove story, and then how I started to understand their messages, because it's not always clear what they're saying. I had to learn, quote unquote, their language and how they speak and how they send messages. So that book was the very beginning of my journey.
And then we have the amazing afterlife of animals. Sorry, I was going to say our pets, of animals. And I have loved every one of these books. Every time I see another book's come out, it gets ordered immediately. I cannot help myself.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, you just made my day.
I can't recommend them enough. And my sister, I think by night 2, the next day we woke up and we both have these wish lists on Amazon of all the books, because we're both avid readers. And we must have been sitting over breakfast and she said, The Pet I Can't Forget is on the list. I said, great, order the other 2 while you're there. So I'm sure it's Hear All Creatures, you talk about how for a time you were a police officer. And when you discovered while you were on scene, these animals would speak to you and give you information about the cases. So a couple of questions here. One, did you tell the people you were working with that you were getting messages from the animals, or you just kind of weaved that information into sort of your investigation? And 2, I want to know what the weirdest thing they ever told you while you're in the police force, because I'm sure that the animals would have seen some weird stuff.
Okay. So The Amazing Afterlife of Animals goes into detail about my police work and how I started to receive messages from animals on crime scenes. And I have to also share that when I was a deputy in Colorado, I was also igniting my interest in animal communication. I was remembering. I was going through a spiritual awakening at that time. I didn't know it. I didn't know what was going on, but I had this strong desire to give back. I'd been in the mortgage business for years. I hated it. And I suddenly wanted to become a police officer. This is weird. I'd never wanted to be a police officer before. So there was just some really weird things going on. And it all tied in later. At the time, it made no sense. So for anyone who's going through weirdness, if you're wondering, why am I doing this? Listen to your inner voice. Listen to what your heart is telling you. If you feel drawn to something, pursue that. Maybe it wasn't that in particular, but it's going to put you on the path of where you need to be. I finally started listening to my inner voice. Being in the mortgage business and being very unfulfilled for almost 20 years, I was so done with that. And so I started to volunteer at my local animal control facility in Bailey, Colorado. It was a rundown, horrible facility, not very nice at all, but there were animals there and I was all about the animals. So I went down there, walked in, started volunteering, and I started riding along with the animal control officers who would go out and do code enforcement and help animals in need. And I fell in love with that. So that riding along with animal control exposed me to the sheriff's department, because the animal control was run by the sheriffs. So once I was riding along with animal control, I started riding along with the deputies, and that's how I caught the bug. So that's how all of that transpired. And I soon became a deputy myself while I was practicing animal communication. So I never put the two together. I just kept them separate. I didn't tell anybody what I was doing because as a police officer, you need credibility. If you don't have credibility, you have nothing. So I'm not going to tell anyone that I'm in my personal time that I'm talking to animals. No way. They would, it was bad enough. I was a female officer, the only female officer on the department. I was still trying to prove myself to the men on the department. If I came up with talking to the animals, oh my God, I would have been the laughing stock of the department. So no, wasn't going there. So unbeknownst to me, at the time, animal communication would definitely start happening in the weirdest ways. So to share one of the weirdest stories, and yes, I got a lot of weird messages from animals, and I wasn't trying in the beginning. They would just start talking to me. I'd be on the scene, and an animal would walk by, and of course, whoop, I have to look at the animal because I love them. So I'd look at the animal and I'd make a connection without trying, and the animal would start sending images or messages. So in the beginning, it started out very innocently. I wasn't trying. I would just love animals. And so I'm getting messages from them. And then I said to myself, well, hey, they just shared something really incredibly accurate about what just happened on this crime scene. What if I asked them to tell me where the suspect was hiding or what happened before I got there? And lo and behold, they started sharing details about what happened before I arrived on scene that would later be proven correct. So that just blew my mind. I thought, whoa, this is really nuts. But I loved it. So I kept trying and getting more and more information. I think one of the craziest moments I had, and I don't know that it was so weird, but it was crazy, is I was sicker than a dog one time, and I was on patrol. It was in the morning, probably around 8 o'clock in the morning, and I got a call for a man with a gun. Well, I was the only officer on duty. It's not like TV where there's 50 cop cars. No, this was a mountain district. We had 8 officers, and the last car went home at midnight. So here I am at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm by myself out there. I get a man with a gun call. So I'm calling for backup. Is anyone out there? Can you get anyone? No, nobody's around. So it's just me. Great. I'm sick. I can't breathe. I've got this sinus thing. I'm coughing. I'm just should be at home in bed. And I have to go to this scene, man with a gun, and be, ready to handle his situation. So I arrive on scene and I see this man completely head to shoulders covered in blood, and he's waving this gun around, screaming and yelling. And I have no clue what's going on. Absolutely no clue. So I get him contained, get the gun from him, get him settled down, and he's going on and on about these dogs, the neighbor dogs. So it turned out that this man he told me that he was attacked by his neighbor's dogs. That's why he was all bloody. I thought someone shot him because there was so much blood. I mean, it was just nuts. And there's something fishy about his story. It just didn't sit right with me. So I listened to that voice. And when I was up at his house, his dogs were in the house with us. So of course, I'm going to tune in to his dogs and see what they tell me. Well, he claimed that the neighbor's dogs came over and pooped in his yard. And then he had this ongoing dispute with his neighbor because his neighbor let his dogs loose all the time, and they always came over and pooped in his yard. So he said that he went out to go chase the neighbor dogs away when the dogs attacked him. That was his story. So he said he took shots at them, tried to shoot the dogs because they knocked him down and attacked him. So his dogs told me something completely different. His dogs told me, they showed me that he went after the neighbor dogs with a shovel. I actually saw the shovel in the man's hand going after the dogs, not the gun. I saw a shovel. The man never said anything to me about the shovel, but I look over and lo and behold, there's a bloody shovel. Like, So the big part of what the story the man left out, his dogs shared with me, that ended up being true. He said, yes, I did try to hit them with the shovel, but it was after I was attacked. So it turned out that the man was lying. He was the aggressor. The dogs were not on his property. He had gone over onto the neighbor property and attacked the dogs with a shovel. Dogs then turned around, chased him back onto his property, and attacked him. So there you have a perfect example of human lying, animals telling the truth. Human was at fault, and he was trying to blame the dogs. So that was really amazing to me, because I couldn't get a straight answer from the man, but the animals were able to tell me what actually happened. So it really shows you that they have no agenda. Like his dogs, even though they probably loved him, they still showed me the truth of what happened. They weren't going to bend the truth. They were just going to share what actually happened. And I think that's really important, because they'll tell you straight up the way that they see it. Although cats will lie. I have had cats lie too.
Why did that lie?
Yeah.
Because they can.
But what did they lie about?
Oh my gosh. Okay. For instance, litter box issue. Somebody wasn't using the litter box, so there's 2 cats in the household. So I'm trying to figure out, the person didn't know who wasn't using the litter box. So I'm asking the cats, and it was like this.
But was there a dog who could tell you the truth?
No dog on that scene, unfortunately. Cats are, I'm telling you, they are so different than dogs in the respect of communication. Dogs are almost always like, yes, let me tell you everything. This happened, that happened. Oh, I'm so excited to be here. And cats are like, and who are you? And what do you want with me? You know, they're just different. Of course, I'm generalizing. Some are very forthcoming and like to share, but cats have this ability to get in my head, and they almost enjoy messing with me. And I'm a cat lover. I have many cats. I've had over 200 through the sanctuary. So I am a total cat person. Love them. But they're just different. They're hard to motivate. You know, they are, certainly intelligent beyond our wildest imagination. But yes, they will manipulate things more so than dogs. I'm sure there are dogs out there that do manipulate too. The cats, they flat out lie.
And if an animal that had previously been a cat in a different life was to reincarnate and come back as a dog, and I ask this because Bumble, everyone joked that he was a living, breathing puddle, and anyone that met him would say he has to be a cat. And he would even tuck his paws and sit. You know how cats do the loaf pose?
Yes.
There would be times where he would do that. And I just wonder, I mean, he was pretty forthcoming just generally, but do you ever see these animals that reincarnate, if they were previously cats, that even if they're a dog, that they can have those same tendencies as a cat?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. I've seen that a lot. I've heard it a lot. And there are just many, many stories as well, as where an animal will do something very strange in their lifetime. For instance, there was a story, a client of mine that had a cat that loved cantaloupe. And most cats don't eat cantaloupe, but this cat loved cantaloupe. When she sliced it open, the cat would just devour this slice of cantaloupe. And the cat lived a full, long life, well into its late teens, and it made its transition. However long later, year, whatever it was later, she gets a new cat, and this little kitten is sitting there as she's slicing over the cantaloupe, and it runs over and just starts devouring the cantaloupe. Now, what are the chances of having two cats that love cantaloupe? I've had a lot of cats. I haven't had a single cat take any interest in cantaloupe, any of them. So, but here's the weird thing. It only did it that one time. The new kitten, just once. It's like, hey, I'm here. You know who I am. And that was all it needed to do to say, yes, it's me, and I'm back, and I'm in this new little body, but I'm not going to eat cantaloupe anymore. It was just enough to let her mom know that she was back.
Oh, I love that. So,
Yep.
sorry, Anne, I'm going to jump in with one other question, because this goes back to when you were on crime scenes, and I was thinking when you were talking about the dogs dobbing in their owner, which I love. I just love that there's no, like, I love you, man, but I've got to be honest here. So when you would tune into the animals, I started to wonder, because I do speak to my animals and they talk to me. We have conversations, and some of my animals will argue with me. I'll be disciplining them, and they're just like, I don't care. I don't care what you're saying, because that's the attitude. But are the animals just talking generally, and people that are able to tune in and hear them get to have those conversations? Or are the animals aware when there are people in front of them that are able to tune in, so therefore they start the conversation?
Okay, so that's a really cool question, because I had that happen in multiple ways. First and foremost, I've been known to eavesdrop on conversations that my animals are having with each other. But usually it's during some kind of either conflict or potential conflict, or maybe in a moment where, like, two cats are, cuddling together in the same, spot, sort of thing. I'll eavesdrop, I'll tune in just to hear if they're saying anything to each other, because I wanted to know that too. Are they talking all the time? Are they like us? They have to be, communicating all the time. And I have found, no, they don't have to do that all the time. They don't do that all the time, but there are times when they really do ramp it up, and when the communication does escalate. And animals are very good at this. They're very good at sending telepathic messages, but it's not necessarily in a way that a human would understand it, or in like the English language, or if you're from another country, in your native language. But it's more energetic. It's more about their feeling, how they're feeling. So that's the main kind of exchange that I would pick up on. And then in my ability to tune in and connect, there's a translation process that happens, because I have many people wonder, well, how do animals speak English? They don't speak English. So how do you hear them in English? What if they're from Japan, or what if they're from Mexico? Do you hear different languages, or do they speak in their native language? How does that work? So regardless of where you're from, the energy that is exchanged between the animal and, let's say, another animal in the household, it'll come to you in whatever form you understand. So if you were to tune in, let's say you were there and you wanted to eavesdrop on them, and you lived in, Italy, you could tune in, and the messages would be translated into Italian, into your form of understanding, or your symbols, or in the ability that you would receive that information. So me, if I tune into them here in Washington State, I'm going to hear things in English, because that's my form of understanding. That's my form of communication. In a split second, there is a translation process that went on there. I know I went off on a little tangent there, but yes, they do communicate with each other. No, it's not like how we do, where we speak to each other, but it's more an energetic feeling, especially like if you've ever seen two animals kind of squaring off with each other, like if it's over a toy or food or something like that, you can see the body language, you can see them tensing up, you can physically see the changes happening in them. So they're more likely to exchange communication that way than they are with the spoken word, like how we do.
Sorry, I had to mute because of a noise that was going on outside. I'm just sitting here thinking about how my cats always seem to antagonize the dogs, and dogs get territorial about the cats. And I'm wondering, I wonder what they're doing. Do animals just create drama? Do they need excitement in their lives?
Yes, they do. And get this, and that's a great question too, because I've had some experiences where the client will contact me and say, these two hate each other. They're always at each other's throats. They're always picking on each other. Oh, they're always fighting. Excuse me. What's the deal? When I check in with the animal, they go, what? We're good. No problem here. We're good. It's like, what do you mean? You guys are always fighting. We're bored. Something to do.
I always think of squirrels that way. They come down and they pick fights with dogs, but they always make sure they stay just far enough up the tree that the dog can't get them, but close enough that you will make them insane. And I honestly think the squirrels do it for sport. They think it's hilarious.
Yes, they do it for sport. I have even had what a human will describe as bitter enemies, like in life. Like these two dogs hate each other, or these two cats torment each other, whatever it is. They'll be in the afterlife. I'll connect with them in the afterlife and they'll say, oh, that's my best friend. So-and-so is my best friend. It's like, what? Mm-hmm. So our perception of what they're doing is a human perception. We have to remember that. They are animals doing their animal thing, and we have to allow that within, safety, of course, but they're doing things for different reasons than we might think. No, you got me. Oh, sorry.
So while you're having a drink, Jane Morris in the chat has asked if there is any special significance when animals come and find us. So, people talk at length about the cat distribution system and how these cats will appear. And my cat, that was how she came to me. She appeared in my grandmother's backyard and I saw her and I went, that's my cat. And she was fine for a few months, but then she ended up coming home with me. But is there a significance to that? Is that the universe sort of making sure that these souls come together, or is it just one of those things?
I think it's very significant. And I think those things happen for a very purposeful reason. There's so much that we don't understand about different dimensions. And sorry, there goes my voice. But even when I would weave in and out of the afterlife, as I was communicating, the afterlife is literally all around us. It's not in a different place. It's not up in the stars or in, somewhere far away. So we all have the ability to connect into another dimension. We have the ability because it's all around us. We just have to know it's there. We have to do so properly and using the right techniques. But I think when things like that happen, it's so important that we pay attention and we honor those experiences. And it's not always going to make sense. What I've learned in animal communication and the mediumship work that I do is that we don't get all the answers. We don't need to know all the answers, but we have to enjoy the journey and open ourselves up to what could be. I think that's the most important. And sorry, I have to cough again.
No, go for it.
Right. So I was thinking about, what about the people who can't necessarily communicate in the way that you're able to with animals. And, we all have the things we want to know about our animals in our lives, or animals you see in the world. Is there a way for those of us who don't telepathically communicate with them to sort of find a way to communicate? And, can you ask a question and then ask for a sign? Or someone was wondering in the chat, is their horse lonely, right? Would there be a way for us to figure out that information by ourselves?
I think we're all doing this. If you are with an animal, if you're around an animal, if you spend time with animals, you're already doing this. And I say this, you're communicating with them on a different level other than just the spoken word. It'd be hard to find any animal lover out there who doesn't know when there's something wrong. And I don't mean you're seeing a physical sign. I mean, you get a sense that something's not right. It's they're not acting normal. There's just something about them that's just not quite right. I've even had situations where my vet has told me, oh no, they're fine. They're perfectly normal. The test results are normal. And my insides are going, no, they're not okay. There's something wrong. And it ends up that there's something wrong. I think we know these things. So for the person in the chat room who's wondering is your horse lonely, you're picking up on something. That's communicating. You're communicating with an animal. You're picking up on the sense that your horse is lonely. And horses are herd animals. They need that companionship. Most of them do. I had a horse one time that just wanted to be alone. There's always an exception to the rule, but generally speaking, if you're picking up on something, you're receiving some kind of energetic message from your pet. So you're not doing anything different than what I do. I've just had so many opportunities over the years to sharpen those skills that the messages come through so clearly to me that it is as clear as if I'm talking to a human most of the time. They still throw me some curveballs every once in a while. But it's just over time that you develop. It's just like going to another country. If you go to a foreign country, you don't speak the language, the first day you can't barely, communicate with anyone. But the longer you stay there, you start picking up words, phrases, you start understanding the meaning, and pretty soon, look at you, you're communicating with someone in a foreign country. It's the same thing with animal communication. After a while, you start to pick up, oh, that's what that means. And then I would get symbols too. Like I would see like a drop of blood if an animal was having some sort of blood issue, or I would see a bottle of insulin if they were diabetic, or I might see, a Valentine heart if there was a heart issue or something going on with the heart. There's different symbols that I would use that had specific meaning to me, but I would ask the animals to send me a message using my symbols, and they would know what symbols that I would understand most of the time. So you can make that connection. Learning how to do this is very simple. The steps are so simple, and most people can have the steps figured out in like 10, 15 minutes. That part is very simple, because if you love animals and you want to know what's going on in their heads, that's 60% of it right there. The rest of it is just quieting your mind so that you can receive, because our minds are so noisy that we don't pick up on the subtleness of some of the messages, and some of them are very, very subtle. So you have to practice quieting your mind. And also there's this thing called doubt. A lot of us, when we first start, we doubt what we receive. We'll say, for instance, the person in chat that was saying, is my horse lonely? Well, if this person received that message or feels like the horse is lonely, the knee-jerk response is, well, maybe I'm crazy, or maybe I'm making it up, or maybe I'm putting my feelings on the horse. My answer to that is trust your first response. If your first response is that your pet is lonely or your pet needs something, act upon that. see what you can do based on that first response. Your first impression, your first response is usually the most accurate of all. In fact, when I teach this in my courses, I have you go through an exercise where you just give me your first impressions. I just want to know your first impression. I don't want to hear full-blown conversation that you have with this animal. I just want you to know, is this animal happy? Are they high energy? Are they low energy? Are they a loner? Do they like the company of others? First impressions are a big part of opening the gateway into animal communication, because what you're doing is you're trusting your intuition. And it's all about trusting that inner voice of what you receive from the animal. And it's an invisible message, so it's real easy to doubt it. So it's a lot simpler than you think. And I have courses for all different levels where you get personal feedback from me. It's not an assistant, it's not automated, it's me answering you and giving you feedback, because that's the way I wish I could have learned. I would have loved to have somebody that took an interest in me and wanted me to succeed, going, hey, Karen, you're right on the money. You did great today. You absolutely got everything right. I would have done anything to have that. I didn't have that. I had to struggle and I had to figure it out all by myself. So I created a program where you get me, which is almost unheard of. But that's the best way to learn, because I'm going to tell you straight up, yes, this is what you're doing. This is what you're getting. And yes, that's right. And here's what you need to do. And here's how you get there, and so on and so forth. And it really is fun for me to see how shocked my students are when they, after just a few times, they're getting all this accurate information. It's like, wow, I didn't know it was so easy. It's easy.
So where can people go to find your courses?
My website has the information listed under, oh my gosh, what is it under? At the top on the tabs. And under programs, I think it's so KarenAnderson.net. And you just go to programs, and I have basically I offer two different kinds. One is an online course for beginners, specifically for beginners. And it's online, it's self-paced, there's no start date, there's no end date. You start when you want, you practice when you want, and I provide feedback. And that is really, truly for beginners. But if you think you've done this before, or you've practiced before, or you've taken courses before, it's a great tune-up. So it's not just a beginner's course. It can really be for all levels. And then for those who are already actively practicing and maybe even want to become a professional, I have private coaching where we sit literally on a Zoom face-to-face, and I work individually with you. So those are all listed on my website.
And also on your website, because you don't actually do one-on-one consultations anymore in terms of taking appointments to communicate with people's pets. And I know this because I tried to book in. When I read the first book, I was like, this is the woman. And but you do have a list of people that you've worked with and that you highly recommend, so that you're giving people resources of where they can go and who they can contact.
Yes. Also, let me jump in real quick. I forgot I have a Facebook group that is a practice group. So if you are on Facebook, it's a private group. It's called Animal Communication Planet. You can get that link from my website as well. And obviously Facebook is free, so it's a free group. You practice with other members' pets in that. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, going back to what you were saying.
Oh, no, I just wanted people to know where they could go if they're looking for resources, to have somebody to speak to. And so you're focusing on obviously the coaching and helping pass the gifts along and getting people doing that. You're writing these incredible books, and you have the sanctuary. So do you rely on donations to keep the sanctuary going?
I do. We are a 501c3. We're a nonprofit, so we rely on private donations. the sanctuary is here on where I live. I live on a 30-acre ranch in Eastern Washington. It's beautiful. And if you go to our sanctuary website, you can see the grounds. You can go on a walking tour and see how gorgeous it is here. It's paintedrainranch.org. And the animals that are here are the pets that no one else wants. So I will only rescue the ones that are overlooked at shelters, the ones that have no adoptions pending, the ones who have been there forever and nobody wants them, the sick ones, the old ones, the ones with problems, the ones missing limbs, special needs. I only cater to the pets that have no chance of getting adopted anywhere else. And they come here to the ranch. They stay here for the rest of their natural life till they take their final breath, and they become part of our family. And that is my way of giving back to the animals, because they have given me so much over the years. And it's just me. We are a family run. So it's me and my husband. He does all the heavy lifting and I take care of all the animals. And yes, we have a Chewy wish list. We have an Amazon wish list if you want to get something for the animals. And yes, we take private donations. And also the proceeds from my books, the proceeds from my coaching, all benefit the sanctuary. And I also found 2 colleagues that provide sessions, animal communication sessions, and they deliver evidential messages like I did. Now, this is really important for anyone who's thinking about getting a session. You don't just want to book with anyone. It's really important that you find a specialist who is an evidential medium. What I mean by that is that they're going to give you actual specific information about your pet that isn't just what I call fluff and puff. It's not, oh, they love you, they're with you all the time, you know, they appreciate everything you did for them in their life. No, these are details like someone just had dental work, or your car just broke down, or they'll tell you what you had for breakfast that morning, or whatever it is. Evidential mediums are the ones that you want to look for. And I have 2 experts that I recommend. Just contact me and I will share their links with you. You can also book them on the paintedrainranch.org website under book a session. They are fabulous. They have both done sessions for me, and I only wish I was as good as they are when I was back then. So really, really important. You want an evidential medium. And there's a lot of people out there that do this now that aren't evidential mediums. So if you do that, you're going to get a very generic reading, and you're probably going to be very disappointed because there was nothing there specific. And that's what's really important, are those specific details, which is the way that I used to do my sessions when I was conducting them. And yes, I did retire several years ago to focus on coaching and writing. I want to pay it forward. I want to teach others what I do, because if I take it with me, it's gone, and I haven't shared it with the world. So I want to share everything I've learned, which is a lot. And the way I do that is through my coaching platforms, and then, of course, writing.
Great.
And before we move on to our final questions, did you have anything else that you haven't asked yet?
You know, I have one really funny question. To me, it's funny. This was the first thing I said to Natalie. I really want to know this. You know, when you're driving along down the road and you see a dog in another car, how can we talk to those animals of the other people as they drive by? That was my first question. Like, can we talk to the animals that are just driving past us on the road? But I just often wonder, what is it? How do they perceive the world as they're just driving around? Do they actually pick things up from what's going on in the world? Or are they more concerned just with, I'm in the car, I'm going to the dog park, I'm with my person, you know?
Well, you can always send love. It's the easiest message to send. And the way that you send a message of love is you literally just think, you know, what does love look like? You know, is it a Valentine heart? Is it a feeling? Is it, can you, if I told you to imagine love, picture love, what does it look like? Just imagine what love is and that you want to deliver it to that particular animal. And then it's just like sending an email message. Just click and send. You just click it, goes from your heart, you send it to them, and just imagine it lands right on them. And then expect a response, because you'll probably get like a boost of love or something wonderful, a feeling of warmth or goosebumps or something will come right back to you. So it's really very simple. The process of sending and receiving a message is so, so simple. So yes, you can do that. Just set your intention on where you want that message to go, because the person driving the car might be, "Ooh, I just got like an overwhelming feeling of love."
Cupid's arrows.
Right?
Man.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's a good thing to know.
And what do they perceive? I think it really depends on the animal, because there are some that, they're just excited to be in the car and going somewhere and woohoo, and, look at us go. And then others that are in the back seat throwing up, they're just like not having, they're not having it. So I think it really just depends on them. They're very much about themselves. So the joy that they get in every moment, this is what I love about them. They've taught me this. You have to find the joy in every moment for yourself. Like, be in that moment. We are so ready to be in tomorrow or next week or 2 weeks from today. We're so uncomfortable to just be here right now. It's like we can't even set our phones down for 2 seconds to just sit quietly somewhere and think about what we love or what we want, or listen to some soft music or listen to the birds. I think that's the greatest takeaway for me, is that you spend your whole life being distracted by a bunch of stuff that isn't important or necessary, and you really need to pay attention to right now in the moment, with the animals that you have right now, the people that you have in your life right now that you can love and hug and tell them how important they are to you. Tell them, take a lot of pictures, take videos, let them know how much you love and appreciate them. Be in this moment right now. That's what animals teach us. They teach us that now is what's important, because tomorrow isn't guaranteed and we don't know what it'll bring. And it really isn't important, honestly, in the big grand scheme of things. Right now, what we're doing in this moment, like just the two of you having me on your show today, this is important to me. And I'm so grateful and honored to be here today, just to be able to share my stories and talk about this crazy work that I do, and help people understand that your companions are still with you. They will never be away from you. There's nowhere else in the world they would want to be than with you. So never doubt that, and continue to talk to them like they are your best buddy right next to you. They love that. It draws them to you. And say their names out loud. Tell stories about them. Celebrate their birthdays. Honor them on the holidays. Think about how you would feel if when someday you're out of your body and somebody back here on Earth is talking about you and telling these wonderful stories about how much they love you. Wouldn't you love that? Absolutely. We all want to be remembered that way and talked about that way. And by doing so, you open up that connection with your animals, and it draws them in, and they feel that love. And they'll feel that you're missing them too, but that's okay. Let them feel that. So thank you for this opportunity. This has just really just been wonderful and special, and I really appreciate you so much. And everyone who tuned in, thank you for staying to the end.
Well, just before you go, we do ask every single guest the same 4 questions to finish everything off. And just before I ask you the first one, Anne, I feel like you and I need to do Karen's beginner course in animal communication together. And then maybe we need a section talking with dogs or something like that. And we can talk about the conversations you're having with the dogs in the cars.
Yeah, okay. It sounds
I feel
great.
like that would be fun. So Karen, to kick off, what makes you laugh?
I think laughing at my own boo-boos the most. Like when I goof up on something, I goof up really big and I laugh at myself the most. I dumped a 16-pound cat on the floor the other day by accident, and he and I just sat there for a moment, and then we looked at each other, and we both literally had a moment of this extreme laughter. So I think laughing at myself and all my boo-boos.
Okay, so next question is, who was your biggest spiritual influence?
John Edward.
Great.
Watched
Have you ever
everything.
met him?
No, but I actually saw him in person, and my mom was on one side, my husband was on the other. They both got a reading from him, and I sat in the middle like, Would love to meet him.
And what would your advice be to people on how to transcend fear?
Knowledge. Open your mind and find out about something. You know, it's truly the ones who know the least about a topic, such as the afterlife, that generally have the strongest opinions against it. But once they are informed and they understand and they've learned about it, it changes the whole ballgame.
Great. And finally, what's the best piece of spiritual advice that you've ever been given?
Don't quit. Never quit. You know, keep trying. I'm sorry, I'm getting really emotional right now. I've wanted to quit so many times because, you know, loved ones can be so unsupportive. And I fought that battle for a very long time, and I had so many things stacked against me at times. Bankruptcy and losing my house and being homeless. I mean, I've been through a lot. I just don't quit. Just keep going, because beautiful things happen, and then you can turn around and help others. So that's a beautiful thing.
Well, Karen, I need to let you know, throughout this entire show, the chat has been filled with nothing but love for you and appreciation for you. I am so grateful for all of these, and I highly recommend them to everyone watching. They're really easy to read. They're fascinating. You won't be able to put them down. And they do bring a lot of peace and comfort while educating at the same time. And I think that's just so incredible. And on top of that, with the sanctuary and giving these animals that otherwise wouldn't have had a chance a beautiful place to land is the greatest gift. You're actually living my dream.
Oh.
If I could be on 30 acres or 100 acres and fill it with all the rescue animals, that is exactly where I would be. So I would like to thank my co-host, Dr. Ann Woolke, for always doing this with me and being as curious about all of these topics as I am. Karen Anderson, thank you so much for making a dream of mine come true and doing this show with us. It has been an absolute honor. And for everyone who's watching this after the fact or is watching it live and you want all of the links for Karen, I will make sure they are in the description below.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Bye.